Warning, spoilers ahead, but if you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend you do. The show RWBY features a very colorful cast of characters, ranging from hunters and huntresses to extravagant teachers and just all around interesting people. That being said, the show has kept many of its characters shrouded in a veil of mystery, leaving things open to speculation. This episode will center in on the relationship between Roman Torchwick and Professor Ozpin. Now, at face value, there is no relationship between these two characters. Roman and Ozpin never meet in any scenes presented throughout the show, and neither references each other at any time. So, as far as we are led to believe from the show's perspective, Ozpin and Torchwick have never met. This fact actually leads into the first theory that I'll be tackling, which would explain why this is the case. The theory is that Roman and Ozpin are not two separate people, but rather two split personalities trying to inhabit one body. This may sound like a stretch, but looking into actually some of the details, it makes sense. Roman and Ozpin are two very different, almost polar opposite people. While one only seems to exist to cause chaos for our main heroes, the other does whatever he can to foster their growth and development as human beings and huntresses. The two also share many physical similarities. They dress alike, each of them uses a cane as a supposed weapon, and each has hair swooping down covering one side of their face. Granted, this could be coincidence or lazy character design. I'm just kidding, that's not lazy character design. Have you seen this show? If anything, it's implying that there is some connection whether or not we've seen it on screen. But is there actually anything in these two volumes that gives merit to this hypothesis? Or are we just basing it off of fashion choices and personality traits? The first piece of evidence comes when Yang and Ruby meet Blake officially for the first time. She's reading a book, and we actually learn partially what it's about. She says it has to do with a man who has two souls, both which are fighting over control of his body. Sound familiar? We also see a scene shortly after this where Ozpin is giving a speech to the entire class. He's described as not sounding like he's really there, and we as the audience agree with this. His speech seems very uncharacteristically Ozpin, even though we've only heard him speak a few times on screen thus far. Could this be representative of his inner scale sliding towards the Torchwick spectrum? Maybe. There are two final pieces of evidence that I'll bring up regarding this theory, the latter of which will serve as a bridge to the next theory I'll be discussing in this video. The first is an image, so if you're just listening to this for the audio, look at your screens now for a quick second. The image is one that I photoshopped together. It is a progression of Torchwick throughout the series of RWBY. Now, you may notice a few things. Yes, namely that the quality did improve between volumes 1 and 2, but I want you to focus in on his eyes. They start out a vibrant green, but as the series continues on, they become clouded until finally, in the start of volume 2, they're completely smoky black. I honestly don't know if this has anything to do with the Torchwick equals Ozpin theory, but you can rest assured that it's not nothing, because Monty was never one to shirk on eyes, and there is something going on with Torchwick that we have not been told. So if you've seen RWBY through to the end of Volume 2, you've probably already dismissed this theory as being bogus. You're not unfounded in your skepticism, as we know during the last scenes of Volume 2, Roman is in custody and is being taken to a prison cell while Ozpin is chatting with his superiors on a conference call. This may throw a wrench in the entire theory that they are one person, until you bring up the last piece of evidence. At this point in the show, we have no clue as to what Professor Ozpin's semblance could be, but I'm willing to wager that it has something to do with time. If you look, his office is just one giant clock tower. If Ozpin's semblance did indeed have something to do with time manipulation or time distortion, it wouldn't be unheard of for him to be able to be in two places seemingly at once, much like Hermione was during the Harry Potter series thanks to the Time Turner. But this idea provokes a lot of new questions that have to deal with whether or not Torchwick or Ozpin is aware of their split personality. And it's a lot of stuff that I'm not going to go into heavy detail at this time. Maybe I'll do a different video, but for this one, we're going to jump into the other theory regarding time. The other theory I have for you, and perhaps it's a slightly more plausible one, is that Torchwick and Ozpin are still the same person. It's just that Ozpin is a future version of Torchwick who has come back to try and prevent whatever hell Torchwick is trying to unleash. This theory, like the previous one, also has its holes, but I'd argue it has just as many, if not more, merits than the one we just discussed. A strong case can again be made for their similarity in appearance. But this also goes further. Even his name is synonymous with fire. And what happens when a fire's put out? You're left with gray and ash, and looking at Ozpin's hair, that's what we have. This could also very well just be coincidence, or maybe there are no such thing as coincidences. There's also an interesting quote from Ozpin in Volume 1 that's never fully explained. He says, "I have more regret than every man, woman, and child on this planet." What might have caused that regret? Could it be whatever Torchwick's planning causes mass destruction and chaos, and that's what he feels guilty for? A time travel theory might also explain why we really haven't seen Ozpin do much throughout the series of RWBY so far. It could just be that he's an old man who doesn't want to leave his school, or perhaps he's trying to avoid any wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey paradoxes that could be caused by his direct influence on this world. So instead, he's set up a school to kind of alter the history for him. Now, these could both be seen as very nitpicky and cookie-cutting to my personal theory, but there's one piece of evidence that supports this strongly, at least in my mind. Much like how the eyes don't mean nothing in RWBY, the same can be said for the songs. Heck, the Red Like Roses song gave us far more story information than we ever thought when we first heard it. Bearing that in mind, I bring your attention to the last song that is played in Volume 2 of RWBY. It's called Sacrifice. It rolls along with the credits shortly after we see the scenes back-to-back between Torchwick and Ozpin. It appears to be sung from RWBY's perspective, and it contains some very interesting lyrics. Part of the first verse goes, "All your faith in ancient ways leaves you trapped inside a maze. Take the lives of those you need, sow the debt and reap the seed." The song continues, "Born an angel heaven sent, falls from grace are never elegant." This song could be about anyone, it could be sung by anyone, but given the fact that it's pretty convincingly RWBY, and if you look at it through the lens that we've constructed in this video, it shows us a pretty convincing picture. It seems to suggest that while Ozpin may have had good intentions starting out, he became corrupted somehow and became the alter ego of Torchwick. Later in his life, he realized the mistakes he had made and sought repentance. But the song also seems to say that even in his old age, Ozpin still may not know what's best and may not know how to tackle every issue that comes his way. And perhaps, much like how Torchwick uses the Faunus to his advantage throughout the series thus far, Ozpin has also been using his students to his advantage. So perhaps even in his old age, he's not shaken his entire past identity as Roman Torchwick. The main refrain of the song is, "You can't take my life, I'm not your sacrifice." And if you use our lens, it is very interesting, because in reality, if RWBY is the one singing this, she could very well be singing it to either Roman Torchwick or Professor Ozpin. Now, even with this evidence, it doesn't make a very strong case. It's one based on a lot of speculation, but I think most people would agree if you ask them that there is a connection, albeit unknown at this point, between Ozpin and Torchwick. They're two relatively unknown characters with unknown motives. Torchwick just seems to be bad for the sake of being bad, and really the same goes for Ozpin, only about being good. We really don't know anything about their backstory. But I think that'll just about wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this video, leave a like or subscribe maybe. Tell me if you liked it in the comments. You can suggest something you might want me to cover if you want. And also check out the Let's Draw series that I'm trying. So